Hi everyone. Today I am interviewing a friend who is an art quilter, and I thought it would be fun for us to talk to her and see what an art quilter is thinking about. When I'm at quilt shows and I see some of the beautiful art quilts that are there, I just am so amazed at what people can do. And I thought, perhaps if you're one of those quilters that's a little intimidated by these beautiful art quilts, you might find in listening to this gal that it's something that you might want to try. Her name is Leigh Layton, and she's from the Indianapolis area, so we get to see a lot of her things, when we're at quilt shows, and a lot of them end up in very nice venues and places like that. So, Leigh, when did you first learn to make quilts, or how long have you been quilting?
Well, my mother was quite the seamstress. She made all of our clothes for many years, and she taught me to sew pretty young. And so for a long time I did clothes. And then some 30 years ago, I came across a magazine cover and thought, wow, I bet I could do that. So that's how I started quilting. So like everyone probably does, I started very traditional. I was going to piece and quilt by hand every time. So I made a small wall hanging first, which was by hand, and then I made a large bed-size quilt for one of my brothers. And after quilting that by hand, I said, we're not doing this anymore. So I took some classes and started quilting by machine. And I have to say, I'm a machine person. I love to sew. I'm not really the hand person. Mostly the only hand stuff I do might be some embellishment or whipping the binding on. So that's pretty much it. I enjoy the machine portion of it.
Okay. Well, she has brought a few of her, let's say, how would you characterize the type of quilts that you make now?
Well, I rarely do. The first one we're going to look at is actually the largest quilt I've done in a long time. So it's usually 40 to 40 by 60, or maybe a little bigger than that, because I just don't do bed quilts. And I will admit I'm kind of geeky, because I kind of like the technology part, so that usually, one way or the other, some kind of technology draws me in. And so these first quilts were, they're mosaics, and it was really getting into the old Brothers Scan and Cut that got me excited about it. I ran across a quilter named Heidi Perfetti,
I've heard
and she does really wonderful mosaics, and that just kind of ticked me to get interested. And so then the next thing I know, I'm looking at a Brothers Scan and Cut, and so that's kind of how I got started. I've done some mosaics by hand, but they're much more cumbersome, and it's kind of really fun to work through the software steps to get to being able to cut all the pieces and then assemble it.
Okay, this is a mosaic quilt, correct?
That's what I call it, because the center is really the star of the show, and it was this particular mosaic I think I did by hand, which means when I say that, almost all my work now starts with a photo of some sort. That photo has to speak to me, and then I start to play. So in this particular case, this was a big hibiscus, and so I blew it up and then actually went through and traced all my pieces, and then I put fusible on the back, and I cut them all out and then fuse them on. And one of the things I like to do with the mosaics is, as I said, I like the machine work, and so I do a lot of free motion zigzag. And so if you look at, it won't necessarily I mean, there's lots of quilting, and I love to quilt. So all my pieces are very heavily quilted. You'll see that in some cases, I don't go around every piece, but I may go around a section, and if you look, you can kind of see that the whole leaf was outlined, and maybe I added some accent with the free motion zigzag. And then when that is all done, I actually assembled the quilt and then quilted it.
Oh my goodness.
But, you know, everything starts with a photo with me, and the more I do things, the more I'm really doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't
And
know.
so you used the scan and cut.
Not in this particular one.
This one you did by hand.
These I did.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so I started by hand, and I have done some others. They can be tiresome, but you know, you do have, it's kind of a trade-off, right? You're either cutting the pieces by hand or you're doing some software work, upfront work, before you get them cut with a scan and cut. But that part is kind of fun for me too. I love it when we get to the point where we're cutting on the scan and cut, because it's like putting a puzzle together.
Okay. And then do you have a long arm machine, or do you do this on your home machine? Okay.
I have both.
Oh.
I have a Juki Miyabi 350. It's an 18-inch head, and it's on a 7-foot frame. So like I said, I do not do large quilts. This is the biggest one I've done in a long time. So the 7-foot, I felt like that was big enough for me, and it's the type of frame, it's a Gracie frame, so I can always add another 2 feet, but it hasn't been an issue.
Yeah.
It's not something that I've felt the need, and I do have friends who have a bigger long arm, so it was like, well, if you really need to do a big bed quilt, you know, I'll just go use theirs.
But you just do this too, just
free motion.
Custom your own.
Oh yeah, I don't have computerized quilting.
Okay.
And this one was on the Miyabi.
Oh wow.
But so yeah, like I say, I love the quilting part. So you know, that's where I tend to get really carried away.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's look at these other 3 over here. I'm going to kind of stand back over here so that everyone can. And
this
tell
one,
us about this.
Okay, this one, I mean, surely everyone has seen, this came from an iconic photo from the end of World War II, Times Square, where a sailor just grabbed a nurse and gave her a kiss. And so my dad was in the service during the tail end of World War II. He ended up not having to go overseas, but he was also a singer. And so I grew, not professionally or anything, but I grew up to my dad singing to us all the time.
Oh.
And so one of the things I remembered was "Kiss Me Once, Kiss Me Twice." It's been a long, long time, which actually was like the #1 song in like 1945 or something like that. So that photo was the pattern for this. This one was cut on my brother's scan and cut. So that's still a process. You know, you start with a photo, and when you use a digital cutter, one of the things you'll see, I mean, you want to cut like all the white pieces at once. You don't want a white piece in one corner and a white piece in another corner. So the software part of it is to sort through your fabrics and group them together so that when I cut all those purples, it was in one little square.
I see.
But when I do almost all my brother's scan and cuts, the first thing I do is with a piece of poster board, I cut a pattern. Because how do you know when you've gotten all these browns, where do they go?
Yes.
Okay, so I cut a life-size or a quilt size pattern, and it's a lot of people when I post them on Facebook want to know, oh, what is that? Well, that's the pattern. It's a piece of white poster board, and I lay it down on the fabric, and then I can tell, oh, this purple comes around here. That's where all the purple pieces go. Because when you get into this part, where you have a lot of white, you're like, where did all these pieces go? You know, so I create a pattern, and that's always fun to post because people are like, what is that? So
like
so
a
that's where
puzzle.
this one came from. Was
neat.
from that photo, and then lots of quilting because that's my favorite part. So
Well, and this one is so beautiful, just gorgeous.
thank you.
Okay, and so now this one was first. Well,
Yeah, that one was way first. This one, okay. So I'm getting into black and white photos. This is my mother, and this is me. So this is my first selfie, which was the name of it, and it's I came across this photo of her, and so I thought, well, this will be interesting. First of all, it's a black and white, so I had to figure out how I wanted to colorize it, and then, I mean, you really can see her features there, and the baby is kind of there, but anyway, so this one is my first selfie.
Oh, that one is neat too. And I love the way you've done the background too. You've got it all in the mosaic, not just her. Wonderful. Okay, and
this last one was just a photo of 3 hibiscus, and the same process, where I start with the photo. I made my pattern. Cut all the pieces, which was a little more difficult because those colors are all kind of close, but was able to do it because I cut my pattern. And then, as you can see, I love the quilting part, and I played with that background being, because all I really did was the center motif, and then came up with the background.
Okay. Well, I like the leaves here that are sort of there, and yet they're not there. They're sort of transparent almost.
And you again can see around those pieces where I've used. I kind of think for me the free motion zigzag is a design point. It really kind of it's not just outlining every piece, but it's actually adding to it. You see those threads shining, and I use mostly variegated threads.
Okay. And that's how we get so much going on here. Oh, gosh. Okay, well, let's take a look at the next step in design. Okay, now we're going to move on to another type of quilt that Leigh is showing. Leigh, tell us about what these are.
So one of the other things that I started to play with, I'd never painted before, but I started, this one is one of my cats who's no longer with us. And what it's turned out to be is that as we lose one, I almost always make a painted quilt of that cat. And so I came up with this way to I call them almost coloring book quilts, because you're actually just coloring. I create a pattern in freezer paper, drawing it, and then I iron it to the back of my quilts, and then I trace the outlines so that I know where I want to say, here's where I'm going to put her yellow, here's where I'm going to put her white feet. And so then I just color it all in. So, I've used markers. This one I love that Luminaire paint because it's so shiny and rich. And then, of course, lots of quilting because, that really adds to it. So this is Elsie, and she's no longer with us. But this was one I painted of her.
Wow. So you have just painted on top of this.
Yes, that was just a piece of batik.
Batik, and you've added the grays and the, wow, very nice.
She was a calico, so she had her white and grays and blonde pieces.
I love her eyes. Her eyes look
well,
real.
the eyes are, they're a part that can make or break sometimes.
Yeah, I think those do it. The fact that there's a little bit of light in here and just very nice, gosh. And the quilting. And you've done a little bit of outlining. Now, is that with that zigzag
Yes,
The black
that's
to-
the free
Oh.
motion zigzag. If you've
Okay.
never tried that, it's really fun.
I haven't.
Especially if you're doing some type of applique where you were trying to do satin stitch, and you know how that is. You move along, stop, turn, try to get the angle. Free motion, you don't have to worry about that. You can turn it, you can make your lines as wide as you want, and even thin too. So yeah, I really, I've done a lot of heavy duty free motion zigzag on some of my panels. And this one truly is a coloring book quilt. This has this funny story. I was looking at one of those connecting thread catalogs, and on the wall was this pastel-y quilt like that, and what looked like to me is that it had a vase of flowers. When I first looked at it, that's what I thought it was. What was actually there was the quilt was on the wall, and there was a vase of flowers sitting in front of it. So it kind of gave me a little idea, you know, it was just a different view that gave me, oh, let's just try it. So this actually, I have lots of coloring books now. You can get them from Dover. And this is a composite of some, you know, like you can get some for flowers and you can just add it. And so, yes, I paint, I have a process that's foolproof, where, again, you trace it on freezer paper, iron it on the back. You can use a light box, but for the bigger ones, paint it to, you know, tape it to your sliding glass door. And do your outline, and then just paint it.
And hope that you don't get out of the lines.
Well, then you can just change the line.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, wow. Wow. I'm going to have to check into this paint stuff. What I like, too, is I was noticing your quilting in the background there. That is so nice. So different. And it's different from this quilt. I just love your quilting, too.
Well, this to me seemed like that wallpaper, you know, that has the rows and they're different. And so,
yes.
You know, it's the whole, oh, in my mind,
well,
this is what I see, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. It's very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so these are painted quilts. Right. And we have something else, too. Okay, we're ready for the next set of quilts. What do we have now?
So the latest thing that I've been working on is, and I've done this for a while, but I really kind of moved completely into it, is starting with the photo. I manipulate it using either iPad apps, which is most of the apps I like the best are on my iPad, but there's others. You know, just about any photo editing software has filters or apps. So I like to manipulate the photo, and then I have them printed, and I'm having it printed at spoonflower.com. There's tons of fabric on-demand printers, people that print. I've used Spoonflower from the beginning, and so it always turns out the way I want. It's quick, so not really a commercial for Spoonflower, but that's the one I've used and been happy with. So this actually, a friend of mine this last fall went on a trip to Venice, and so he always lets me use his photos. So this was a photo he took, and then I had it printed. And if you know, again, I use 2 bats when I quilt because I really feel like your quilting just pops, you know. And so like, again, most of these are not bed quilts because you die of heat, because 2 bats is very warm.
Do you use cotton, poly?
I use a thin cotton on the bottom, and I have it's by the Warm Company. It's called Soft and Bright, and it's 100% poly, but it's very, very thin.
Okay.
And I put that as the top layer because I feel like I put so much thread in my work that you really need something that's going to hold it. And so that's been what I've had the most success with. And for the most part, they don't seem to show creases when you fold them as much.
Nice.
Because you know how that, especially if you're
Yes.
doing a show, you have to ship it there, and your worst nightmare is when they open it up, it's still folded. So anyway, so I use 2 bats because I really feel like you put a lot of work into the quilting. So it gives, it really makes it show up.
It does. It's lovely. And lots
So,
of pretty quilting.
so I have done lots of photos, and for a long time, you know, I did just a border around because, you know, the picture does all of it. So I
Yeah.
still have some of those. And then this is one of my nieces. She went to Iceland by herself. She's about, I think she just turned 26, but she was younger than that. Decided she wanted to up and go, and it was a break, so she got on the plane and went. So this was one of the pictures she took. She was very brave. I'm not sure I would have done that, but I don't know, you know.
And the colors that you added to the picture were so, I mean, the
It's very
thread does it
different.
all, right?
Yeah, it's very different from what you would normally think. And this was actually, there is a free online photo editor called lunapic.com. And this, some of their filters, you know, all of them have different filters. That's kind of what I've seen with all the apps I use. So I'll start with one and go all the way through and say, I like this, I don't like this. So that's how it started.
Very nice. You really used all the technology that.
Yeah, I'm really kind of
Yeah.
geeky like that. You
That's
know, that
good.
kind of attracts me, and then I start to play, and you know.
We all have the things that grab us, and I think this is what I love about quilting. The differences, the ways that you can go and still be
Oh yeah, they're
a fabric.
every time you turn around, somebody's come up with something new.
Right. How fun. And this is
So this is my new thing. This actually is one of my original panels, and you hear me talk about them probably or see them on Facebook. This was designed totally in electric quilt. So I picked something that I would never do. I am not a traditional piecer. I don't particularly like to piece. I used to hand applique. Don't do that anymore. Certainly with the mosaics, I use fusing. But I always have loved the Hawaiian quilts. And even when I got my scan and cut, I thought, oh, I cut a bunch of blocks, which are still in the box, because I haven't ever finished it. But when I started to use electric quilt, which I've used for years, but I started to play, and it's like, well, why couldn't I do a panel with electric quilt? Now, you use electric quilt, and there's a few blocks in there, are there not?
Yeah.
There's hundreds of blocks in electric quilt. And so the other thing I've started doing, this background fabric, I designed with my iPad. I drew it.
Oh, neat.
And so now in electric quilt, you can pull in your own fabrics or photos. So this was a fabric I designed, and it's called, it was done with a brush called spray paint in one of my drawing apps.
Okay.
And it actually just, if you really look at it, it's just, you know, things of color. You just change the color. So I pulled it in, used it as a fabric, and then pulled in some of the blocks that come with electric quilt, just colored them because they have lots of fabric in there, and then exported it as an image and had it printed. Blew it up and had it printed at Spoonflower.
Wow. So it's actually printed.
Yeah, see if you can
onto
really
your
tell, you know, if you really look, you can say, well, that was an applique, but...
Well, you can't tell looking at it. Very cool.
So this is the new thing, is incorporating my photos, manipulated photos, into electric quilt. And then creating a panel and having it blown up and printed.
And then you get to do what you like to do
Sure,
on top.
all the quilting. Yeah, the quilting.
Very nice. And now when you do this fabric, do you end up with like as much as you like? Can you order like 16 yards of it if you wanted? Or do you just you could?
Yeah, if you wanted to do your own. Now,
But
one of the things I've noticed, or I've started doing, because I think I'm so clever, You know, when you do a panel like this,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have matching binding fabric, right?
Oh, that's true.
So in electric quilt, when you design your quilt and you do your photo, you just do one side that much wider, so that when you order it and it's printed, here comes your binding fabric.
Oh, isn't that smart?
Aren't I
You are
clever?
smart. That was clever. Yes.
So,
that was good. 'Cause-
So
okay. We learned a little bit extra today.
yeah, you use electric quilt.
Yes, and
Now you
I'm
have
gonna
to play.
have to try something like this. All right, we have one more set, I think, to show. So okay, here are the last two that Leigh brought, and she's going to tell us about these. These are really neat.
So one of the things I've really done in the last year or so is I call them my original panels. Now in some cases, like the ones we just saw earlier, they are a manipulated photo with just a framed border. But now I've started to use electric quilt to create the entire panel. So instead of just creating a design, I'm creating a panel. All right, and so this particular one actually started as, this is a Palomino horse, one of my brother's horses. His name was DJ. This photo is probably 30 years old.
Oh.
I've probably made it at least 3 different ways, you know, an applique and some things like that. But this was a manipulated photo. I put it into one of my apps, and you know, I fell in love with the color. You know, that because everyone, and there's multiple steps I go through. Sometimes I'll manipulate it, make it more saturated, because I want it to be rich right in your face. And so, yes, so this was a manipulated photo, and I pulled it into electric quilt. And in this particular case, they already had this great purple batik.
Oh, cool.
So I put that in the border, and this actually is a printed border.
Oh, okay. How neat.
So this is DJ.
Very neat, DJ. And you did this, but it's a panel.
Well, when
Okay.
I get done, I mean, it's what I get. It's one whole piece.
Uh-huh.
You know, this is not a pieced or applique border.
Right.
It comes.
Just very neat. Very neat. All right. Last quilt to show. What's this?
Okay, so this is called California Cuties. And this is the most difficult one I've done yet. So it started, my cousin posted a picture of her new granddaughter, Emma. And so this was her first birthday. Now they live in outside of San Francisco. And so this picture was just so adorable. She had this little flower crown, and she was stuffing the cake in. So I said, can I use this picture? And she goes, oh yeah. She says, you know, my other granddaughter, her sister, we have a picture from when she was 1. She's 4 now.
Oh.
She's 1. So they sent me both of those. And because they did a similar skirt on their birthday, so they sent me the 2 photos. And it just so happened, I think this is Emily. I hope I don't have this wrong, or Hannah. Anyway, in the background of her was a window, and the Golden Gate Bridge was in the back.
Oh.
So I thought, wow. So this started out with a photo of her and a photo of her, and then I took out all the background. And I had to elongate the little skirt around because I had 2 girls now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an extra photo. This background is like a fabric I designed. And so it was, I don't know, kind of like brush strokes that just went across.
Okay.
And then I went out and found on Free Photos a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I colorized it. And then I put all of them together as one photo. So that's actually 5 different photos. And then I pulled it into electric quilt and created, this is a panel. Oh, there's a thread. This is a panel. It's all printed. This is one of their swag borders.
Uh-huh.
And so 5 different photos, put in an electric quilt, and had it printed as a panel.
And then quilted it. Amazing. The things you can do nowadays with the technology
Well, see,
that we have.
it's the geeky part of me. I love playing with the photos, and right now I'm working with black and whites. So I've done a couple already that I have done, and they're the fun photos of when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have one of my brother and I that's just cracks me up every time I look at it because we had on goofy sunglasses, and so it's just another thing to kind of branch out into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I colorize them with my apps, and then I'm creating panels. So
it's personalized.
oh yeah, they have to talk to me.
Yes, and it's just amazing. It's really neat. Now, I had a couple of other questions. The new thing is the black and white. Is there anything else new in you've combined 5 photos here. Do you think you might want
and a border with electric quilt? Well, I'm doing some custom work in electric quilt.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yes, so that allows me, and I didn't bring those. That allows me to actually start using quilt blocks within the panel.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
So,
okay.
So that's the new thing I'm playing. So I'm taking black and white photos. I'm manipulating them till they're colorized.
Uh-huh.
Often I will, I think we did that in one of the others, but I created this background fabric. But a lot of times when I get a colorized photo, I want matching fabrics. So I'll go in and crop out a little piece of this pink maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and then save it as a JPEG, pull it into electric quilt as a fabric.
Okay.
So all of my fabrics are coordinated on this particular one. I didn't do that, but on my new ones, I'm doing that. So they all have coordinated fabrics.
Wow.
So lots of fun, lots of technology, and I would encourage everyone just to try it, something new.
Okay. What would you suggest then to someone who hasn't done it? Where would you start if you were telling somebody to start? Like, what small thing can we
Okay, well,
begin
one of the things I would say is, like, I love my iPad. So if you have an iPad, there's a bazillion apps to play with photos. If you don't have an iPad, this one called lunapic.com, which is a web-based software, which means you can have a Mac, you can have a tablet, you can have your laptop, PC laptop, you can use your phone, because you just upload a photo to that. And then you can go through, and they have all these what they call artistic filters. So everything, you can colorize them any way you want to colorize them, and then just export that. So that way you really haven't spent anything for a fancy device, or most of these things you can even use your phone, although I think the phone would be a lot harder because it's small.
Uh-huh.
But so that's an easy way to get started, to manipulate the photo, and then from there you've got to figure out, are you going to print it? Now, we all started out printing on fabric sheets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so if you do anything bigger than an 8.5 by 11, then you got to piece it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a little method I did that. But usually what would happen is I'd blow it up. So I blow it up because I want this wide, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's bigger than one fabric sheet, so I got to piece it. So most people on our printers today, what happens? I print this one, I print this one. This one has lines through it.
Uh-huh.
You know how your printer goes?
Yeah.
It works fine for the first 3, and then number 4 messes up. And then you got to mess with it, and then when you print the next one, maybe the color's a little darker. So that's how I started with spoonflower, because spoonflower, you can do yardage if you want.
Mm-hmm. Or just a
and
little.
some of the things, you can do an 8-inch swatch, a fat quarter, or yardage.
Okay.
You can't do a half yard, you have to do a full yard. And I print exclusively on 100% cotton sateen.
Okay.
which is 56 inches wide.
Okay.
So I use layers within, and if you know anything about photo editing software, there's something they call layers, and layers actually allowed me to put all these photos together.
Yes.
But you can use layers and say, I want a 2-yard piece of fabric, and then have 6 images. I just lay them in, so that you're getting the most bang for your buck, right?
I see. Okay.
So, yeah, if you've never tried printing on demand, it's pretty fun. If you want to do something bigger than an 8.5 by 11,
Okay.
because you don't have to
Something.
do seams.
Yeah.
And you can be assured it's going to be evenly printed. So,
And hey, give it a try, huh?
try it. It's fun.
Well, thank you so much for
It's my
bringing
pleasure.
all of
Thank
your
you.
things, and I think it's going to be one of those things where a lot of people might want to try this. And Leigh has quilts that are have been in shows and traveled around. So if you're interested to find out more, do you have a website?
I don't have a website. I have a Facebook page called Quilts LAL,
Okay.
which is my group, and I also have Leigh Layton Quilt Artists, both of those.
So I
So
encourage
yeah,
you to
come
check.
see.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. And if you feel like you learned something from this presentation, go ahead and hit that like button. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe so you'll be notified when the next video comes along.